but it hasn't come through, whatever it is. What is it?
It's from Hillary. It's from District in a wheel.
You just sent it through?
Yeah.
Well, I do intend to start as soon as Anita's back because we really need to.
We're live.
Okay, I'll formally open the meeting shortly.
Yeah.
Hi, Anita. I really need to formally open the meeting. Are we ready?
Yes.
Thank you. Right, Mark, have we got anybody in the waiting room?
Yeah, we got David Hall.
I think we better let David
I'll bring him in.
Thank you.
Starting the meeting.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. I'll start with, good evening, David. I'll start with apologies and declaration of interest. Apologies first. This might go on a little. Anita, any apologies you've recorded?
Apologies have come in. Well, no, David thinks he'll be able to join the meeting at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Work commitments. That's the only apologies I've had come in.
Okay, thank you. Right, well, I've received apologies from Claire.
Oh, yes, sorry, and Claire.
Well. Yes, Claire isn't well. And did we say we've had a mail from Terry, or is it that he's having some difficulty getting in?
I think we've heard from him, Chair.
Oh, right, sorry, I thought someone said. Yes, I've good evening, Anita. I was intending to join the meeting, but I can't find or don't seem to have the Zoom details. He's using a different computer, so okay, so he's got some technical issues there.
He hadn't sent it up to about 20 minutes ago.
He's made a comment about an item also we have a little bit later. If it's not too late, please tender my apologies. If you see me looking away, everybody, I'm not getting disinterested, but I've actually got 2 laptops open this evening, having a bit of a fuddle at previous meetings, trying to hop between screen and meetings. I don't have apologies as such. I am very, well, disappointed isn't the word, but quite sad to report we have 2 resignations. Unconnected. Firstly, Adrian Folk has tendered his resignation for personal reasons and certain commitments and family matters outside.
That's a shame.
Yeah, no, obviously. And obviously Adrian contributed a lot in his short time, so that was disappointing. But again, he's going to stay active, I think, with the speed watch and other matters, which is great. So I'm sure it's not the last we've heard from Adrian. And also Sue, I'm afraid to say as well. I spoke to Sue earlier today, and there are some personal and some health issues that we discussed privately, and she also feels she needs to step down.
Right.
So again, obviously, will be sorely missed. Obviously can always be relied upon to say it how it is. Always very interesting opinion. So no, 2 more vacancies, 2 big holes, unfortunately, on our parish council with Adrian and Sue's departure. So yeah, a bit of a shock. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. All right, we'll move on. Any declarations of interest? No. Okay, thank you. Public session. David, I'm going to invite yourself to speak in a moment, because obviously we've received something. But just first, Anita, is there any other questions sent in by members of the public before we talk to David about his issue?
No.
No. Okay, thank you. David, I'm sorry we didn't get around to it at the last meeting, if you're able to come off mute at some stage, but you did write to us and highlight some issues with parking on Newton Road. If you just describe that for the councillors, I think we've got a good idea. If you could just describe it for us, and we'll see if there's anything we can do.
Yes, I've been concerned for some time about cars parking on the footpath in Newton Road. The footpath on the side I live on is quite narrow, and cars seem to have become accustomed to parking with half the car on the pavement and half on the road. Now, that means that people, certainly if someone had a wheelchair or a push chair, electric scooter, that sort of thing, and there are a few older people live in Newton Road, have to go out into the road and go around the car. Now, that's fine if Newton Road was a small, quiet cul-de-sac, but I'm sure you all know it's the opposite to that. It's like the M1 at times. So I don't understand why people do it, because if you park your car on the road correctly, vehicles can still get by, including the dustbin lorry and those sort of vehicles. So I don't quite understand why people do it, because it's forcing particularly older people, and if somebody's got a pushchair or children, they have to go out into the road to get around the vehicle. I think it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
I think there's a secondary consideration to that, that if the cars were parked properly, the road would therefore be narrower, and maybe some of the cars wouldn't go so fast because the gap to drive through is smaller. So to park in the road properly is absolutely essential. It's a safety thing that costs nothing. I don't know who actually controls whether you can or cannot. I believe it's illegal, but I'm not sure.
David, is that just up by the junction, or is it further up the road?
No, further, well, out by the junction, yes. Well, outside the junction is one issue.
Yeah.
I mean, the issue there is people come speeding around the corner, and if there's a car parked, if you're coming the other way, you're on the wrong side of the road. But the double yellow lines that were put down, to be honest, were an absolute waste of time.
Yeah, it was the most we could do. It was the most we could do.
The car's about a metre.
Yeah.
So that was a waste of time.
That's the most we could do, and the individuals won't change it.
Sorry, individuals won't change it.
No, I mean, I can't understand why they park there in the first place.
Well, they live there, don't they? They live on the house.
Well, I know they do, but there is, the house there on the corner does have a drive at the back in front of a garage that could be parked in.
But they don't use it.
Well, no, exactly.
They have more than one car as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's by the by. It is along the whole road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it even happens right up almost by the farm.
David, is it, without naming names, is it a small number of people on a lot of occasions? Is it lots of different people on the odd occasion? If you just give us a little bit of a taste, then we might discuss if there's anything we can do.
Some of the cars are regular, and
right,
they do belong to people that live in this road. But it also seems, whether it's because some are parked like that if a visitor comes or someone else, they just copy, I don't know. And they think that's the way to do it. I don't know. But it's a combination of both.
Okay.
But who is responsible for monitoring it?
Police.
It's a police matter.
Yeah.
They're the only ones who can do anything. And they'll only do it if there's an obstruction that a pushchair or a wheelchair can't get through.
Well, I'll send some pictures, and there are clearly some of those. That is the case.
Yeah.
So it's a case of ringing 101.
John, John, before Peter, I think you had your hand up first. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to make the point exactly that Mark just made, which is it is a police matter. It's 101. It will only be enforced if there is an obstruction, and obviously there's been a lot in the press over the last few months about enforcement of this, recognizing that it could be enforced throughout the country, but it isn't, because there are so many areas of the country, like a lot of the rest of the village, where it's actually a necessity to park halfway on the pathway. I can see what Mr. Hall was saying there, that's one area where it certainly isn't necessary to allow cars to get by and have vehicles parked. It's not necessary to park on the path, so it could and should be avoided. But it's not a parish council matter. It is a police matter if they chose to enforce it.
Would not the parish council have more sway though than one private individual? with the police?
I think that's for I think a number of the councillors would have their own opinions on that. I've seen where we've tried to get enforcement of double yellow lines, and we've had very little success in getting police to enforce those. So to get police to enforce parking on paths would be, I mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing anything, but I don't think we don't necessarily have any more clout than 2 or 3 residents voicing their on-the-spot concerns. Anything we voice is by definition third hand.
I just thought you might have more clout. That was all.
Well, I think it's good. Yeah.
Sorry, David. I think John's next. Sorry,
Oh, sorry.
John.
Yeah, I think enforcement is one thing, but I think there's a neighbourliness thing here as well, and perhaps we have a role as a parish council to remind people that by sending perhaps a short note or a fly around to say that this issue has been brought to our attention. There are concerns about clearly about speeding down that road as well. That I wonder whether that's one of the reasons that people do park on the pavement a bit to keep their cars out of the road. But if cars are parked there, it certainly would tend to discourage people from speeding down there. And I would be in favour certainly of sending a note round to say this has been brought to our notice, and could you please make sure that blah blah blah, rather than go to the police, because it's a neighbour thing rather than a police thing, really, in terms of actually effectiveness getting things done.
Yeah, there's a couple of avenues, isn't there, which I'll come to. Thanks, John. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Sorry, David Watson.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. I thought a note pointing out that they're causing a blockage on the pavement, and we wouldn't wish to have to refer this to the police. We would prefer it if they could please park properly. But I do think we ought to do something.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's part of the decrim parking, so it's borough council. So I've just emailed one of the execs to ask if blocked footpaths are part of decrim. So if they are, then we can get a warden to wander around the village.
Yes, that would be useful, Mark, if you could.
Yeah.
Okay, so just picking up on David and John's point, are you both suggesting a physical note from us through the letterboxes down Newton Road, very politely worded, pointing out the inconvenience to residents, especially those who are infirm, wheelchairs, pushchairs, in very gentle language, saying, look, that this can become a police matter, which we don't want it to. We all live here. Could you please refrain from this if it's you or any of your visitors?
If you know who the individuals are, David.
I think we'd probably have to do the whole street to be fair.
Yeah,
it needs to go to everybody, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because I was toying with the idea, shall I or one of us go on Facebook and say it? But again, it's it's 1,200 people. It's very accusative, or if that's even a word, it's a Donald Trump word. If we're able to do that, Anita, I'm even happy to go and kind of drop the flyer off. I don't have a problem with that. I need to get my steps in. I would say, picking up on what the councillors said, David, I think it's a more immediate police matter if they're blocking entry to your drive or somebody's drive. I think
no, it doesn't affect my driveway. That's not the reason for my
no. Because I mean, again, I think, you know, as Peter, I think somebody suggested, it's everybody's kind of mandate. They can go and report these to the police. I think it would have more weight if it was blocking somebody's drive, and I probably misunderstood. I thought one of your photos did show that, so fair enough. I would suggest we do that as a starter for 10, David.
Okay, thank you.
Again, it's not gonna be heavy-handed. It will be gentle.
Yeah, that's the correct way, I think.
But we start with that, and then, like I say, if that doesn't have any recourse, or there's one or two repeat offenders, then we'll make that we can make that representation to the police if need be.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
So okay, well we'll crack on with that, and with that. So
I'm sure you're right about Facebook. It would just create an unhelpful thread.
Yes, I think so. It came across my mind. I thought, is this the gentle way? But then listening to yourself and David Watson, it makes more sense to, yeah. But again, it from what you described, David, it's quite prevalent. And as you say, if we're selfish about it on the behalf of other residents, it's actually a way of slowing down cars as well.
Yes.
It's probably worth the printing paper and the shoe leather to go and do it. So, okay, Anita, shall I tie in with you offline just about the exact wording of that note?
Yeah.
Okay, and all right. Sorry, Peter.
Just to get it as an action item, don't we need to propose it and second it and vote on
Yes,
it?
we do. Yes, we do. Excuse me. Can I propose that we go ahead with that with a nicely printed letter, not too much, to go through everybody's letterbox in Newton Road in the next few days.
Yeah.
Seconding that, David Watson. Yep. All those in favour? Thank you very much, everyone. David, that's what we can do at the moment. We'll just see how it goes after that.
Yes, thank you.
No problem at all. David, as per usual, you're welcome to stay while we bumble through some other things, or you can slip off. It's entirely up to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Reports from county and borough councillors. Anita, do we have anything from county?
No. I send to it every single time, but unfortunately, no, we haven't got anything again.
Right. Okay, that's a pity. Mark, is anything from the borough level at all?
Borough level, not a lot really, because everything's slowly winding down now.
Sure.
There's less meetings going on. Rob Bridge, the new chief exec for the Unitary, started last week. It's his second week now. So he started meeting various people. I haven't met him yet. He's got his shared director of children's services, director of finance, director of adult social care, director of legal and democratic services have all been appointed. Also for Kettering, the director of transformation is Lisa Hyde, who's executive at Kettering. So that's really good for us. She's really good. She's a bit of a no-nonsense girl, so she won't take any slack, and she'll make sure it's all done. And with just stepped down at the chief exec, and the other exec were Kettering, Graham and Martin as well. So at one stage, the whole of the Kettering senior execs were running the Unitary, shadow Unitary as well. So that was good. A lot of the good stuff we've been doing is slowly moving in. Other than that, planning's going on every 2 weeks. That's about planning and licensing, about the only meetings that are going on at the moment. That's about it, really. Unless anyone's got any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Mark on borough matters? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mark. Move to item 3 then. So the minutes of the last meeting, and those draft minutes have been circulated. Is there any points or questions on those minutes, John?
Yeah, can we change the transport plan to travel plan? I'm sorry, I should have picked that up before and notified Anita. That's an amendment to minutes, and I think it's on page 2, and it says, I think it says a transport plan, and actually we were talking about a travel plan.
It's got to be travel plan.
Yeah, it's twice there.
Okay.
Yeah, we have traffic plan actually.
Oh, traffic plan, that's what it is. Yeah.
And
should be travel.
To travel plan.
That's right. Yeah.
To be fair, I do recall.
Yeah.
Using those terms. Okay.
Okay.
Any other observations or corrections on the minutes? Okay. Thank you very much.
Sorry,
David, you're breaking
very
up.
Small.
David, you're only getting 20% of what you say. Sorry.
Yeah. can I suggest that in view of the fact it's a very small alteration, that Anita doesn't recirculate the minutes, just leave you to sign them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Peter.
Well,
So I just was going to propose that they're
Sorry, Mark.
accepted
Mark,
subject to the amendment.
sorry, Peter. Mark, did you have a comment? Sorry.
I was just going to say, I propose we accept the minutes with the amendment.
Right. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, if we could say Peter proposed and Mark seconded in any
Oh, I think
way.
that's fair.
All those in favour? Thank you very much, everybody. Splendid. Right. Let's just go through. Let's go through the matters arising and progress on those actions. Where are we? So, and just a couple of actions to carry over. One was Councillor Rowley will fix the lock and bracket again, and that was in the recreation ground. I think, Mark, you've managed to get that sorted.
Yeah, admittedly, I only did it yesterday, but it's done.
Yeah,
and I couldn't pull it out, so hopefully no one will manage to do it again.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for doing that, Mark. That's much appreciated. Thank you. Another one, which is obviously a perpetual action, Anita, of course, is the incidents. I think it's flood incidents, isn't it? I know you're battling on with that.
Yeah, I'm nearly at the end of 2018. So we're getting closer. Oh dear.
No, well done. Thank you for that. Excuse me. Action 1. This is in relation to planning. Councillor Good circulated a document on material considerations some time ago. He'll recirculate this.
Yes,
yes.
Yeah. Okay. And also action 2, Clark will contact NCALT to ask the possibility of a planning training course being provided. I think you did that and you've circulated that as well, haven't you, Anita?
Yes, yes.
Do we have any takers or interest?
Yes, it was Paul Johnson. I've got this somewhere. There's 2 of them. I think the other one was Peter.
Good.
Hold on, put it somewhere. The list. 2 so far, but I was actually going to ask in any other business, unless you. Oh, Paul and no, well, bear with me. The planning.
It's John. You've had one
no,
today.
it's Claire and Peter for that. It's Paul and Sue for the Off to a Flying Start. So yeah, it's Claire says she'd like to attend the planning course, and Peter. So I was going to ask if that's because I need to get back to the training officer, because she's very kindly, because I sent it in just as she was getting it ready. It's not actually on the website yet, and she said, I'll hang on until you've got however many places you need. So, you know, in to be fair to her, I need to get back to her within the next day or so. Okay,
so Claire and Peter have acknowledged an interest. Is there any other councillor here also interested? John?
Me. Please.
John as well. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's quiet. I've got to go now. I've made you host.
Right.
Leave me running. Switched off so that the YouTube carries on. Hopefully I'll be back in an hour and a half.
Right. Hopefully we'll be finished by then, Mark, but thank you. Thanks for getting us started.
If it's finished, just leave it and it'll close everything down.
Okay. Thank you. David, thanks for joining. I understand you're busy, so thanks for joining us.
That's all right. I always said I'd try and make things if I can, but yeah,
we wouldn't normally drag you out, but we're down, as you can see. Mark had to go, and we're down to 5, and if you got less than 5, you can't vote.
Yeah,
so
no, that's all right. That's all right. Not a problem.
If it's any consolation, I'm hoping this will be a shorter meeting than normal. There's less business to transact.
That's all right. You know what my thoughts are planning on.
Don't worry, that there's no planning applications.
That's a relief.
But we'll get back to the actions then. And action 3, this was our discussion about the potential for the bridge being closed. The clerk will write to Highways again to ask about possible closing of the bridge on specific occasions.
Yes, I did, and I don't know whether you saw it. The answer came back Well, when I got back after 6 o'clock today, the answer had just come back. I've sent it out to all, but I don't know whether anybody's picked it up yet.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
can read out what
sorry.
he said. Basically, for the bridge to be closed for specific occasions, a temporary traffic regulation order would need to be applied for and made. That's section 16A of the Road Traffic Regulation Act 1984. Then the other question I asked was pedestrianisation of the bridge.
Yeah.
He said, I assume also allowing cyclists and not just pedestrians. A permanent traffic regulation order would need to be made, which involves a public consultation process, and as a result, the outcome cannot be guaranteed, dependent upon any objections received. The bridge itself is regularly inspected along with all our other bridges and meets all the current national standards of taking vehicles of 40 tonnes.
Okay. I'm just checking to see if we actually got this item on our agenda again today. If we have, we'll postpone discussion until then.
I think we have.
So
Yeah.
just to clarify, Anita, are you telling me that that bridge can hold a vehicle that weighs 40 tons?
According to David Grinley, yes.
Impossible, absolutely impossible.
Talking,
Why has it got weight things on it to stop people going on the bridge to start with? You know, there's just it's
got width restrictions rather than weight restrictions.
Exactly. It's just it's got width restrictions on for a reason.
It is on the agenda, Nick, as another item.
It is, and I think we'll get to it then. Sorry, Anita, thank you. The action's clearly complete. Excuse me, sorry. Action 4, Council Batch will contact the school to obtain more information with playground equipment. That's also on the agenda for later. So I've just understood my colour coding, so I should have also postponed the earlier point as well. Is there any more? Just on the, yes, this was the white paper planning for the future. I think this was about Claire completed the document summarising our position, and Clark to submit the document. So, and Anita, I think the action was for you to submit that document. So
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you to Claire and everyone who contributed to that. Some good work. Thank you. That would appear to have been all the actions. So thank you very much. That was short and sweet. Thank you. So let's move then to finance, please, Anita, if we may get the bank balances.
Right, the community account statement as of 17th of October, 49,393.26 pence. That was still no movement for a while because I was waiting to get the authorisation sorted out. And the business saver account, £10,778.18. And then accounts for payment as listed, the data protection, the information commissioner's yearly payment renewal fee, that's due to be paid at the beginning of December, but it was set up by direct debit last year, so that will come out automatically. The Ken Signs invoice has come in for the chairman board, and the Royal British Legion, I don't know was there a poppy wreath laid or?
No, Anita, sorry, I meant to send a note out. There was a service online which just the Reverend Gillian took from inside the church.
Right.
There is going to be a wreath laying on the 11th at 10:30, 11 o'clock that day, and just a very small sprinkling of people will lay the wreath, of which I'll be one. I don't think there was talk about having a +1. I'm not even allowed a +1 now. Sorry. So
can you clarify the invitation that John Bennett sent out said councillors could attend.
Did it? Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
Now,
very
what I
much
don't know
stand
is whether
corrected
that's
then.
before the new regulations or what.
How long ago was that, David?
Well, I think it was last week.
Right.
I
I might stand double corrected. I've got John Bennett an invitation to an online Remembrance Sunday.
yeah, I did that. It was on
Right.
Wednesday. I saw a note saying I'd probably be going. But I don't know what the situation is on now.
What I've got here is there'll be separate acts of remembrance on Wednesday, 11th of November, 10:45 a.m. at both Geddington and Weekly War Memorials. By law, participation in these services is now limited to certain persons. See page 3 of the bulletin for details. Right. Sorry, you're ahead of me then,
It
David.
says council.
Ah, right. Well, in that case, you may legally participate in the ceremonies you're attending as part of your work, i.e. Lord Lieutenant, local MP, faith leader, local councillor, volunteer, member of the armed forces, veteran. Okay. Fine. That's good. Sorry, I was led, perhaps it was my misinterpretation that it was only one of each to lay the wreath. But in that case, folks, then yes, please attend if you wish. It'll be a short service outside. And well, I do stand corrected, and please attend if you can. But again, totally understand in these circumstances if not.
I should be there to represent the deceased from Newton.
Sorry, David?
I said I shall be there to represent Newton.
Great, thank you. Thank you. In answer to your question, Nita, yes, I do have the poppy wreath. And Norman was very clear, we're supposed to be paying the Kettering branch of the Royal British Legion.
So I need now to have the sort code and account number of where it needs to go to then.
Yes, I'm afraid so. I don't have that, but I tell you what, I'll go and check the box, see if there's any details on it.
Okay.
It'd be good to vote now if we could, but then obviously the payment mechanism will try and get sorted out. Thank you, David, for correcting me actually on that, because it is an important thing that we can do. Okay, so it's just the 2 accounts for payment then, is it, Anita?
Yes.
There's the Ken signs for the chairman's board, and then the wreath for the Royal British Legion.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I propose that we accept those accounts for payment? And that's seconded by David, I think. All is in favour? I think that's all of us, Anita. Thank you. Right. Item 4C then, budgetary discussion for 2021 to 22 to include capital projects the next financial year as well, including Village Hall car park extension. So I think circulated was a draft budget, which I think you've pulled together, David, if I'm right.
Yeah. I mean, quite frankly, annually, the costs of running the council vary very, very, very little. The big change this year is 2,000 or 2,300, I think I put in for possible election expenses.
Yes, you did.
Still needs, if we stayed with the same precept, it'll give us a surplus of another 7,000. In reality, I suspect that'll be 10,000, because I shall be astonished if we end up with a need for a vote. But obviously we are required to provide for that. As far as capital projects are concerned, we've got plenty of money we've got 60,000 in the bank. The car park, I think, was 37. I wouldn't suggest we add to the precept for that, because that was part of having the extra 10,000 a year, was to provide for those capital projects. So as far as today's concerned, we don't need to make a decision until January.
No.
Our rules require us to have a draft budget in November. We could talk about it now and in December, but the decision needs to be made in January so we can put in the request. I would suggest we don't put it in before January, because the big issue that worries me is what other costs might come from the reorganisation of the local authority.
Yes.
It really does. I mean, I'm told that there won't be any other costs other than the election expenses. The reason for the election expenses is that every other parish pays their own, except Kettering. And Kettering have now decided or been told that the new authority won't pay any election expenses.
Right.
The big issue, as far as I'm concerned, is the other costs. That if you look at Oundle, which will be part of our new unitary authority, they pay grass cutting themselves. And there are other similar costs, street lighting, you know, the old problem with who pays street lighting. All that stuff has just been dumped in abeyance. And at the moment, there is no discussion even going on. I'm assured there won't be any changes this coming year. But if there are, and they come between January and April, we won't be able to do anything about it because we can only precept in January. So my view is leave it to the last minute. That's the best we can do. In the meantime, if there are any other costs that people are aware of that might affect the total budget, let me know and we can put them in, but we can adjust it between now and January when we hear what's happening.
Right. David, very eloquently put. Thank you. I think that's fairly clear. I've got a couple of bits to add. Peter.
I did send a mail to Victoria Perry as county councillor to ask if there was any movement because of the fact that we'd heard only about the elections, and she did confirm, and Councillor Jason Smethers also confirmed that there was no intention to change anything that they were aware of for at least the next 18 months. So to endorse David's point, we are all we're hearing so far is no, there are no plans to change anything. But yeah, and a second point, looking at spend, going to be discussing a little bit later on the car park. It was identified as one of the key aspects of the current review. We will be discussing it a little bit later, and you will hear from that discussion that between now and when we do have to formalise the precept requirement, there will be some. We'll be somewhat closer to a decision on whether that spend is required or not.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So
I worry about the future of general expenditure is that, as I can see, it's not that they have decided not to change things; it's that they haven't actually thought about it.
That's exactly it.
A bit like the rural forum. You know, there's been no discussion about. It's now they've cancelled all future rural forum meetings, and there has been no discussion about it. So it may come back, it may not. Who knows?
Yeah. I get your point, David. I know we keep hearing, oh, it couldn't possibly, and they've got to consult. But like you say, it's the radio silence is deafening, isn't it, John?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with David, and I think we've benefited from Kettering being rather more generous than some of the other councils, and I don't know if anybody has really worked out how they square this circle. And I am concerned about what might happen to us and the other villages. But it may not happen immediately, but eventually some kind of evening out is going to take place, and we need to be prepared for it.
Peter.
The specifics that I had asked about and got specific reassurances were grip bins, cutting of verges, cutting of grass in public spaces and those sort of things. They were the ones that they were stating it would not change within 18 months. But
it's street lighting is the big one, as far as I'm concerned.
Look, David's got his summary. I think that's great. But so we normally precept 20,000. We expect our normal operating expenditure to be between about 10 and 11 or 10 and 11 and a half, which has enabled us every year to put away some money towards the capital projects. The slight difference this year, as David says, was that we were asked to budget for election costs. David's put that within that 20,000. So effectively reducing the surplus that would go towards capital projects. For me, that seems to be a sensible move. It is arguably there. We don't think it would happen, but that's fine. It's not like it's going to disappear.
Well, Chairman, can I just add one thing, which we
Okay.
just need to think about? We have an opportunity. I mean, if we have a reason for increasing the precept by 2,300 this year. One of the discussion points I follow is about referenda on increasing parish council costs, parish council expenditure.
Mm-hmm.
All I can see so far is that there's no referenda required this year if parish councils wish to increase their precept, but nobody will, there've been no decisions made about the next year, i.e., sorry, 2022.
Yeah.
The slight worry is, do we use it as an opportunity just to push up this year, knowing we'll get away with it? Or if we need to push it up next year, might there be, what might we fall into a referendum? We certainly wouldn't want to do that because that would cost more than the precept.
You're right, David. I guess there's that side of the argument, which is the kind of, we've got to be cautious because of the unknown and the fact that we do have the facility now to increase it. What we should also look at is we do have a lot of money in the bank. We'll hear a bit from Peter a bit later on, and we'll talk about the car park. We set out to say there are really kind of three potential capital projects. We've clearly identified the car park. We have a lot of detail on that. The Newton entrance we've tried, failed at the moment, but we this may come back in the future. And again, like Peter, I'm going to bring this, we'll talk about it later, but I'll bring this slightly forward. The School Parents Association are also saying to institutions, would you mind contributing towards a leisure facility to be in the school grounds, on some ground which is not used, an indoor leisure facility? And I've had obviously outline conversations with the chair and deputy chair to say, well, give me a clue, what are you expecting? And I think they would like, though I'll talk about this a bit later on, they would like a contribution of somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000, but I'll talk about the detail later. But the point is that's another one that could be effectively taken care of, but we'll talk about it. So the point is, rather than increase, should we decrease or stay the same on the basis that we are, do we arguably have enough money? We don't know yet. It's a difficult one. I'm kind of minded to stay where we are at the moment, largely because of those unknowns, David, because of we don't know what might hit us. I'm personally not inclined to want to increase it on the basis that we have so much surplus already, but that's just me. And again, as you say, we'd have to agree this till January, but we need to be airing this for 10 minutes every meeting. So, David,
we don't have so much surplus because we have committed it to capital projects.
Yes.
What worries me is one of the big failings of the county council was they didn't increase to take into account the rate of inflation over many years, as a result of which they suddenly found themselves 25% behind in inflation. We haven't increased now for 4 or 5 years. Whilst inflation is low, we've probably lost the best part of 10% effectively. So if we don't do anything, and if we happen to have an election, so we don't need to make a decision till January.
No,
but I think we need to weigh these issues very carefully. The principle of having no increase, full stop, flies in the. You can't do it forever.
No. It's a very interesting point.
And 50% of our costs are the clerk's costs, and clerk costs go up every year.
They do. Let's let Dave Rushton come in, please?
Yeah, initially, I mean, I think everything, this is just my initial thoughts. I think everything that you've said so far to me makes absolute sense. But I actually, in this particular case, I actually agree with Nick, because the thing is at the moment, if we've got, shall we say, 60 grand in the bank, if I heard the figures correctly. Now, obviously, capital projects are, shall we say, one of them's like 40 grand. I mean, we're going to have 20 grand left for spare. And I just think personally that if someone was to challenge us and say, well, why you got all this extra cash? I mean, yes, it's good to have a reserve, but I think for me, we need to be somewhat realistic about this. And for me, yeah, I personally think at this precise moment in time, I mean, yeah, by all means, we could say, yeah, we'll keep 10 grand spare in case if the county council or whatever you want to call them decide to do something drastic. But I mean, but I also respect the point that you say that potentially we don't want to get in a hole. So I personally think this year we should possibly leave it until we actually make some inroads on what we're actually going to do with spending the capital projects. Then possibly, if we can, maybe review it next year. But that's just my initial thoughts.
Chairman, can I just clarify something? Dave said that we've got 60,000. 10,000 of that we need for this year's expenditure. We had the money in May to cover us through to next May. So you can't take that as available for spending. That is already committed.
Sure. But
So
okay, we're still left with 50.
Take 40 grand out for the car park and 10 for this year's expenditure, you're left with 10.
But then we're going to get a bit of a surplus for next year anyway as well. So what would be left about 15 grand?
Well, yeah, I'm loath to spend down every penny that we've got.
Sure. Because I mean, I think
we want is an emergency budget.
No, of course. And I think if I remember rightly, when I first arrived, we were dangerously low, and I think the precept was like 10 grand at the time. And obviously, yes, we made an argument about 3 or 4 years ago to increase the precept tax based on the fact that there's a referendum possibly coming, which is going to prevent us from increasing the tax into the start with. So, I mean, we have effectively already made that argument 3 or 4 years ago. But I mean, yes, I mean, potentially next year there could be an argument when we've actually spent something to actually increase it a little bit more if we can. But obviously, with all fairness, I don't know what the restrictions are. So obviously on that, potentially if they do arrive. So, I mean, for now, this is what my original thoughts on. But like I say, I could potentially change. So.
Yeah, well, thanks, Dave. And like I say, this is just a little bit of a brainstorm, and we need to move on soon, so we have to make the decision. Some interesting points coming out. Peter, I think you had your hand up again.
It was actually a point that David has just mentioned, David Rushton. The fact that we've had this threat of a potential cap being put on parish council precepts, and that was being hanging over us like a sword of Damocles for the last 4 years, and it's never happened, and there's still no plans for it to happen. And we did react sort of 3 or 4 years ago to say, well, okay, it may be next year that we're told we can't put through an increase, therefore let's put it through this year and build up the reserves. Well, we've done that. We built up reserves. There has to be a limit beyond which we believe that we're actually fully provided for, and everybody's got a valid statement. There's nothing. I'm not discounting anything that any of us have said this evening, but as David said, we actually do have quite a bit of time still to decide it, and circumstances will change.
That's true. Okay, so look, I mean, I think there's some good, rich arguments there. I think David Watson, the interesting thing you've said that we need to be quite aware of is what you said about inflation. I mean, none of us can deny that we've gone in at a flat 20,000 now for 4 years. If we agree that all the principles around that, the sense says, well, hang on, we're going to have to make a little bit of a hike to make up for the last 3 years of inflation, and then increase. Yeah.
Just to give you some idea, when we first put 20,000 as the precept, the costs of running the council were budgeted about 9,600. This year they're about 11,000.
Right. Okay. And that's an interesting, sobering statement, David. And if we were then, when we revisit in December, to have a look at what that inflation catch-up, David, looks like, and whether it was called that or whether it is the 2,300 segregated, that might be a point we discuss. So thank you.
Just one thing I want to ponder on
very quickly, my friends. We do need to move on.
Yeah, no worries. So basically, if the worst come to the worst, and they did decide to cap us effectively, what would be the most that we could raise? Are we talking 1%, 2%, 5%, or 10%, or?
I think it was 2%. It's capped at inflation.
Okay, 2%.
And anything above that needs a referendum. So 2% on 20,000 is 400 quid.
Yeah. No, I do take your point now. I do take your point on that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I think I'm going to move us on only because we don't have to make it. It doesn't have to be a decision tonight. Right. I see under item 4D, Geddington School potential contribution to new leisure facility. So I figured I thought it was later in the meeting. So as I just mentioned in the previous item, the School Parents Association are looking to raise, I think it's £20,000, for which they are looking to get some form of match funding to bring it to 40,000 for what we used to call a MUGA, a multi-use games area, but I think they're referring to as a kind of indoor leisure facility. I don't have the full detail, and I'm certainly not presenting it as a proposition, so I'm just briefing the parish council. They are looking to build that in the grounds of the school as part of the school kind of outside area, which is little used. Of course, it will be used by the pupils at Geddington School. But of course, COVID and lockdown aside, assuming a normal day, the idea would be as well to open that for other village groups, local residents, organised sports. So very much along the lines of the MUGA that John, the other John, whose surname I forget, I do apologise, came and kind of give an idea for to be built in the recreation ground. And they've approached me informally to say, do you think the parish council could help? I, of course, said that, well, potentially. And of course, it is in our plan. You know, this is something that we're looking at in terms of capital projects. How much have you raised? What are you looking for? And they gave me those figures. And I, again, certainly nothing was agreed. But the implication was that certainly £5,000 will make a lot of difference to getting to their target. And they've also approached the GVFB and other institutions. So that was going along swimmingly, but very recently it's been put in abeyance because the indication has been that it would need floodlights. And that's going to be A, an additional cost, and B, that they may struggle to get through planning.
Sorry, Sam, I thought you said it was indoor.
It is, but then for some reason it spills to the outdoor as well. Don't ask me how. So again, there's some facilities for outdoor, some for indoor. It's a good point. At the moment, whilst they wanted to start the works next summer, that is now put off, and also because of uncertainty around COVID. It's an interesting point, David. I suppose sometimes you don't see the wood for the trees. I'll go and ask the chair and deputy chair about that. So like I say, this is not for us to make a decision. It's just a kind of briefing at this stage. But again, it sounds like the kind of thing we might have an interest in. But I think obviously before we discuss this formally, we'd need to see a lot more detail. But I just asked them to be in touch and said, come and see us when you know what's happening. Peter, then John, please.
I'm not necessarily against what they're proposing in principle, but just bring something else into the equation. One of the things that we've constantly heard when we've been looking at planning applications is the limitation of the school from the point of view of attendance for pupils. And if there was a need for anything, surely it would be an additional classroom rather than a leisure facility. If they are as stretched as we've been led to believe from the point of view of available places, rather than using up available space and funds for that, I would have thought that they would have. I'm not running the school, I'm not involved with the school in the slightest, but I thought they would have at least been considering that and maybe discounting it. Maybe there are other logistical reasons why they could not have additional classroom facility, but it seems to an outsider, it seems more relevant than a leisure facility.
I think it's a good point, Peter. I don't know the answer. I could speculate and say that construction of classrooms rests with the school funds and the education authority. This would be reportedly funded by the Parents Association, which has a mandate or can fund certain things, but is not permitted to fund things that the education authority is. But that's just what I think, but I'm not saying that that's fact, but it's a good point.
I'm sure that may well be very valid from the point of view of who should be providing funding for classroom, as opposed to, but as I say, if the need is greater, then it may be that, and the classroom isn't being provided, it may be that is the sort of thing they should be spending raised funds on. And also I know, having been around the back there once, a year or so ago, I know there is quite a large area, but there would be a finite amount that they want to build on. And if they were to build a leisure facility, it would preclude subsequent building of a classroom.
Yes, that's an interesting point.
What I'm saying is that there are questions that need to be brought in to give us the fullest picture.
Well, look, at the end of the day, this is all good stuff, because at the end of the day, and I would ask them to give us a formal proposal or come and speak to us, it's all good stuff they need to cover. A little bit like, again, with the cricket club and the cricket pitch, it's good to get these things down. John, and then Dave, I think, wanted to say.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, we've struggled to find a suitable site for recreational activities and come up against residents' understandable concerns. And so in some ways, this would be an ideal resolution. So in many ways, I would welcome this. I understand what Peter's saying. That's, however, surely although I guess we need to have concern as a broad view of the community, of the village, but surely that's really a question for the management of the school. I'd be very much in favour of exploring this.
Dave Rushton.
Sure. I've got a couple of things. Now, obviously, about 5 minutes ago, I know I don't want to sound like I'm badgering people. Obviously, we discussed the budget. Now, obviously, five or 10 grand or whatever the figure is, if let's say we've got 15 grand in reserves after we spend that village hall project, we're left with potentially 5 or 10 grand left as a reserve. Now, obviously, I know I'm not going to get too much into that. That's just one point I'm going to make. Because obviously, if we are going to do that, then obviously we are going to need to act based on what I said earlier. Second of all, if we are going to, shall we say, support the school in building a recreation ground area, like whatever you want to call it, is the parking. The parking around there at the moment currently is absolutely atrocious. So if we're saying, like, we know how the schools, we know how the parents park down there. It's like, literally, if we are literally going to have to, like, say, well, here's another 10 people are playing on the cricket ground or whatever it is, where are they going to park? Because currently parking down there is an absolute nightmare. I mean, at least if we extend the village hall, at least we can say, well, we're extending the car park. We can put the cars in the overflow area. I mean, to me, that makes logical sense. We tackle the village hall first, build a bigger car park for the cricket club, for the obviously village hall, and the I can't think, the bowls club and all of the people around there. And then we can say, hey, look, we've increased the car park by 50%. I think we've got a valid excuse now to add extra facilities into the recreational ground for that reason. I mean, yeah, I think that's my main issue, is money and parking. But I like the idea. I like the fact it's cheaper than our plan. But I think a lot of residents near there are going to be very peeved if they find out that they can't park, especially how bad it is down there already.
I think some really good points there, Dave, actually, and I think, again, the parking is one I'm sure we'd want to ask their committee about. You did pick up on it right at the end, but I was going to say the reason why this is well, not personal, but why I'm interested is we can potentially help another party achieve for the residents only using a fraction of the amount of money that it would have costed us. And it may be, when we discuss it in earnest in the next few months, that we think actually a stitch in time saves 9. I don't know.
I do like that aspect of it, but obviously we've got to weigh that against the parking and other bits and pieces. So
absolutely. Okay, I'll move on. I'll just David Watson, please. Sorry, David. You're on mute, sir.
Sorry about that. Yeah, one other thing you need to think about and talk to them very closely about is if you go back 20 years, one of the big things in schools was use of school facilities for the community. Then there became a problem of who's going to pay for the caretaker to look after the facilities, to clean it all down. And most schools have stopped using it for that purpose. And I would be very concerned if we put money into something for the use of the whole community, and all of a sudden we discovered, for other reasons such as that, it was no longer available to the community and just might become an extra classroom just in case.
Yeah, and there's weekends as well, because you'd want it to be able to use the weekends. So
Absolutely.
There are issues.
Absolutely. I think I'm not sure they fully thought this project through.
Yeah.
David, they to be fair, they may have done, and all I've got is the highlights of the highlights.
Yeah.
To be fair, to them, you know, they're volunteers, but they're just as earnest and I think professional as we are. And like I say, I think they're just at the moment it's in abeyance at the moment for certain things, but they have said, look, please raise it, get it on the radar. So, but you are right. These are all good points, as in pros and cons, which if you're happy for me to, I'll relay back and say, hope it goes, you know, hope you can pick up your plans again. When you're ready to come and speak to us, these are some of the concerns or some of the, you know, the things we aired. Okay. Right, let's move on, folks. Item 5, risk assessment register. Insurer's answer to consequential loss question. Obviously, this was with Adrian, obviously, who's since resigned. Adrian did get an answer, I think, which came, was it just after the last meeting? I don't know if that was circulated, Anita. I'm happy to read it out if need be. But
I think it was raised briefly at the meeting because I have a feeling he sent it the actual day of the last meeting.
Right.
I think. So I think we briefly raised it, but I don't think I circulated it.
Right. So Adrian was very clear in what he asked insurers. And he basically said, I'm asking whether our policy covers the council for consequential loss, please. And he then gave an example. If an accident happens, an individual can't work as a result of their injuries, are we covered by that? So that's consequential loss. So it's not just, let's say, the pain or the suffering, but then that person loses money. He was very clear in his example. The answer that came back from the insurers was to give an example of when we might be liable. So, for instance, if we inspect land, we think that we own, we think there's a problem, somebody trips over and hurts themselves, we're responsible. Which, to be fair, that's not what Adrian asked. He asked the next question, and it's still not been answered. I don't. Peter. I think this may have been addressed to you as well, actually.
Sorry, but you're right. Their response was actually talking about our public liability insurance. It wasn't talking about consequential loss, which is a totally different thing.
So, as far as I'm concerned, that's still outstanding because they didn't answer his question correctly. So, I'm not sure where we take this from now, but basically we're going to have to get back to them. Anita, I'm happy to pick up this action because all of the the addressees are there, the lady's name is there. I'm happy to just go back and ask that question, and be very clear. I mean, I'm not,
Okay.
I do deal with these kind of questions of consequential loss quite a lot in my job, and I'm happy to ask her the question again, Anita, copying in you, and be
Right.
very, very clear what we're after.
Yeah. Is there an understanding within council of exactly what we are viewing as consequential loss? Because I felt even from Adrian's question, it actually tended towards public liability more than consequential loss, because normally consequential loss is costs being incurred because of default or by action on our own part. So in other words, if we entered into a contract with somebody to provide something, and they provided something that then caused some form of damage to other people's property, are we liable for the consequential loss of their errors? And that's where we would protect ourselves by law of contract.
I'm going to refer, if David Watson knows the answer to this, but it's interesting, Peter, I've got a slightly different view of what consequential loss means in law. And in contract law, I was of the view that what it means is similar to what Adrian has said, that there is the direct loss, which is somebody's lost money, been injured, whatever. But as a result of that, there is another consequence, which means that they have had another loss. They couldn't get to work,
Yeah,
or
but isn't that
or a shop couldn't trade, or something like that.
Isn't that subsequent loss rather than consequential? I thought consequential damage was costs arising from damage based on our action or inaction. And I felt we do need it clarifying by the insurers, but it's going to make it a lot easier if we can be quite certain what it is that we're asking.
Good point. David, are you able to arbitrate on this?
No, not at all. Normally, consequential loss is losses that we incur as a result of something going wrong. But we only have one income, and I can't see how we could lose that unless the bank went bust or something like that, in which case it would be, I mean, I suspect that's uninsurable anyway. But
right.
I just don't know. I would have thought, like Peter, that the sort of things Adrian's talking about is wrapped up in the public liability. That normally, if you get a claim, if somebody's, I mean, we had the claim on the car park many years ago, with somebody fell over. The insurers settled, but that would be for all of their costs. It would have included their costs,
right.
loss of employment income, all that sort of stuff would go into one cost.
It wasn't just payment for a broken leg; it was payment for the costs associated with an accident.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I've just looked it up, and I this sounds immodest. I think I'm right. There's direct loss and then consequential loss. Direct loss is the pain of the broken leg. It's the medical care of the broken leg. The consequential loss is the further consequences of that person, which could be not being able to operate their trade, or if for some reason, if we had a tenant that was a shop not being able to trade. It's that kind of thing. I think I'm quite sure on this now.
We need to speak to them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm happy to put in the email that we're actually different in what we think consequential loss actually is. Could you first explain what you believe it to be in the contract, in terms of losses, and secondly, do you cover that definition? And that way we've got both things asked.
It was being triggered by the fact that the term featured in our risk assessment. So it's actually it's our own terminology that we're now pursuing. Are we covered for something?
Yes. Okay. But I think we are asking what is the extent of what we're responsible for. Again, public liability is one thing. I mean, and that insurance will cover us. But yes, it's whether or not. Yeah. Okay. I'm happy to take that action, Anita. Unless there's any more, I'm happy to write that to the solicitor. Okay. So let me just pull up the agenda again. Right. So let's move to planning then. We do we do have some decisions, don't we, Anita? I think you circulated them. I've got them in front of me. I'm happy to read those out. So the one ended in 0601, Mr. and Mrs. Norman of 17 Skeffington Close. That was granted permission. Although I do, yes, yeah, that was. Then 0615 and we think 0614, 5 and 6 Newton. The name is Parker. That's been approved as well, David.
Yeah, yes, I was aware of that.
Okay. The one ending in 0914, Mr. Harker, extension to temporary planning permission at Cobley Lodge, that was granted. I think that was some time ago we looked at that. And then there's something about the cam grain as well, which we'll come to in the other planning matters in a second. But obviously, yeah, planning applications, we don't seem to have any.
No, none at all.
Has anybody spotted any? Which is good.
Do we have a date yet for the Newton Caravan Park to be discussed?
Not to my knowledge, David. Maybe Mark or Claire may have known, but they're obviously not with us at the moment. So there was just this cam grain thing, which I must be honest, I've not noted on Rushton Road. Apparently, it's an environmental statement screening opinion. I don't know any more than that, I'm afraid. I've not paid any attention to planning recently.
I've read it, and it is looking for guidance from KBC on an earlier decision and a subsequent appeal, because they're now looking at extending their area, but this isn't a planning application from extending their area. This is guidance on the screening requirement for their planning application that was approved, and they want to extend that to a future planning application that we'll be putting in. So it's very esoteric from the point of view. For example, they want to move the location for 10 storage silos that haven't been built yet.
Yes.
When they're built, they do want to build them somewhere else, but they're talking about the screening implications of that relevant to the screening decision that was made on the original application.
Sure.
And it's candidly, I think it's something that the planners are best suited to sort out.
Where will these new storage things be built?
It's all, if you could picture a satellite view of the site, the existing building runs essentially north-south, and to the east of that, that's where the original silos were going to stand. Now they want them standing still to the east, but further to the east, because they want to put in a grain processing, because they want a level of vertical integration of their process. So rather than just processing grain, they want to go on to produce product, whether it be flour, whether it be cornflakes, I've no idea. But it takes it from just bringing the grain to the site and processing the grain to then processing the grain into commodity. So it is, when that goes forward as a planning application, that's the one that's going to have an increase of, I think it's, I speak in a correction, I think it's 40 jobs or something like that, with shift working, and there's going to be a lot of issues relevant to that. But that is not what this application is. This is just looking at the screening decision that was made on the previous application.
Okay. I'm sorry, Anita did have a hand up. Sorry, Anita, I think you were going to say something. Apologies.
No, I was just going to say it was sent to us on the 27th of October, but the expiry date was also the 27th of October. And then because the application type was down as environmental statement screening opinion, I thought it was one of these that we don't have any opinion on, like the trees and things like that. So, yeah, so I've never seen one like that before, but yeah, the date when it said it was sent out was the same date as the expiry date. I did send it to Claire, but perhaps she also thought the same.
Right. It doesn't sound like it's anything that needs.
No.
Well,
I don't think so.
Environmental issues, I hate to say it doesn't concern us, but in general, is it anything that we feel it concerns us, or can we move on? Okay, we'll move on then. Thank you. Right, splendid. Right, item 7, Councillor Watson, report of the last The last quarterly rural forum held 13th of October.
Indeed, it was the very last rural forum meeting. They've abolished the rural forum, and there are no plans, as I said earlier, to reconstitute it. Although I gather other councils have talked about it, other areas within the new unitary authority have talked about it, but when approached, Kettering expressed no interest. As far as the meeting was concerned, it was really there is no deputy chairman, because obviously there's only one meeting which the chairman was at, which is Jim Hakewell. We tried to influence the agenda to include some things we wanted to discuss. That wasn't allowed. Very much dominated by Lisa Hyde. Really very few issues. I mean, it didn't last very long. It was a Zoom meeting. It was over within the hour. Yeah, quite a disappointing end with no consultation whatsoever.
David, I've got a question. Is there, well, it's a question in two parts. I think we answered the first one. Does a rural forum of sorts have any value? Is there strength in numbers? Is it good to bring and find that there's an awful lot of parish councils and rural councils with the same issue? But secondly, what I've heard over the last few years is that it's pretty good, pretty effective, it's good, but it just often gets dominated by politicians. Is there a potential that we start something that is not the current rural forum, but is a different incarnation where the parish councils collectively in Kettering Borough are in firm control, and they meet quarterly with a nominated representative? They do their thing, they send the minutes of that and their opinions to Kettering Borough or the new unitary.
Have you been listening in to private discussions?
Always.
There is some thought that if there is no formal rural forum for the villages, then there may well be a private regular meeting set up, setting our own agendas, etc., etc. At the moment, that idea has been floated, and I think the officers have heard. But you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the big problems of the rural forum is it has been dominated by various political individuals, party political, which has made it very difficult to get across. There's so much trumping of the party lines. And you probably remember we had that furore a couple of years ago when Mark tried to get himself in as chairman and then as vice chairman. And I had to point out that it was against the constitution. It was very much the executive wanting to take over and control the discussion. And it's been a challenge over, I guess I've been on it 12, 14 years. There've been a lot of very big battles that we fought. A lot of things that actually were very good. We had the law on the on audit changed. We actually went to the down to London and to talk to them about the illogicality of what they were demanding and the costs, which is why we have this very light touch now. So there've been a lot of big issues. But it's strength of numbers is the important thing, that people realise that there are issues that need discussing, and also getting clarity, because for the people attending the rural forum, they are big issues. For the borough council, sadly, they're probably relatively small issues, tend to get shunted aside. But the problem is it has no power to do anything, and the street lighting is a clear example of that.
No.
We raised that 10 years ago. It's never been resolved.
Okay, so it's a bit of watch this space then. So we may, the potential is we could have a rustic forum as a phoenix from the ashes. We shall see. John.
Yeah, I agree with David with what David said and what you're saying. I think the parishes do need to have some kind of effective voice, and there have been times when the Rural Forum has tried to be that, but hasn't really, and has been controlled by officers too much. Obviously, the relationship is different, will be different, because it will be a relationship with the unitary rather than with the borough. But we could become even more lost than we have been in the past with the unitary. So I would have thought, I mean, there should be some kind of forum that maybe is controlled more by the parishes, but definitely has a link through into the unitary. It might be, I mean, I don't know if, because obviously there'll be Kettering parish councils, there'll be Corby parish councils, there'll be East Northants parish councils and Wellingborough parish councils. Whether or not they should still maintain those 4 different area identities, I don't know. But it's certainly something that I would have thought is been really important. Because when it was first set up years and years and years ago, it was really meant to be a voice for the villages, and there needs to be that.
So there's an argument to say, let's just see what happens in the new unitary, see if they facilitate something or organise something that is the same or more.
Yeah, but it's
what you're saying, John,
but it does need to be bottom up rather than top down. There needs to be a link between the two, but there is a danger that, well, no, we have found that it has become a bit too top down, I think.
Okay. David, last word on this at all?
No, I've nothing to add. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's watch this space, but there's definitely a gap there for something, and it does seem to me that if I'm sure a lot of parish councils feel the same, and look, we'll just see what happens in the next few months. But it's interesting to hear that there might be rumblings. Okay, let's move on then. So correspondence received and circulated. There was a few bits. There's a consultation, apparently, isn't there, Anita, on social housing? Is that right? Am I thinking it's public consultation going through to 15th of December?
Yep.
Yes, there is.
So, okay. And we can send a return back. Anita, again, it's not very clear from what I've got. Have we been sent this have we been invited to give a parish council response, or is it another one of those where any individual councillor, resident or otherwise can give? I've only got the attachment.
Yeah, it never makes it very clear. I mean, I took it from that. It's only just come in, hasn't it? I took it from that it was, I mean, I know the Corby Borough Council is sending response in, and I assumed it was for the actual authorities rather than individuals.
Right, so
but
you're saying that
I may be wrong, because it never makes it really clear.
To be fair, it does say, I've probably answered my own question. It does say, dear councillors, on 4th of November, public consultation will start on draft proposals for how the new Northamptonshire Council will allocate social housing when it is formed next April. So it is addressed to councillors. So
you see, there's an awful lot of these consultations come in, and it's actually quite hard to try and determine which ones are relevant for us and which ones aren't. There's about 2 come in a week.
Right.
There's a lot. There's a lot. Yeah. There's another one just come in on school admissions.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, they're coming on children's services, adult. There's a lot of them come in. And I must admit, I did think it was one like that. And I immediately thought that's for the bigger authorities, because, as I say, I know with working in housing.
I see what you're saying. Because it says, dear councillors, it's not us, it's borough and county councillors, you think?
Chairman, should we not actually be thinking about or using as an opportunity to remind them that social housing within Geddington should be for Geddington people?
Well, that is, we can. Like I say, if just, you know, if one or two of you at least feel like this is something we might want to send a response on, we can allocate 10 minutes at the next meeting. I'm more than happy. That's
Well, I think we should. I mean, we moan enough if somebody from outside is allocated into the village when we have people within the village with need. If we've got an opportunity at least to make the point, I think we should.
I can't speak for her because it's wrong, but I'm pretty sure Claire would have some strong thoughts that she would want to send a response on this.
I'll put it on the next agenda then.
Well, we need to, yeah, but were you suggesting that some of us should get together before then? Because it's probably quite difficult to. If the closing day is the 15th of December.
15th of December, which is, and our meeting is, I think it's the day before, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. So, to be fair, we would really be better off armed with a subgroup's succinct points. I must be honest, I don't even know if there's 2 questions or 52. I must be honest. So I don't know the length and breadth of the task, John.
No, I don't actually. I haven't answered that. Should have.
Look, if anybody feels they wish to lead, just to literally jot a few very brief sentences or arguments or points down. Again, we've decided that us as a parish council, we're not going to send things back in set templates anymore. We'll send what we want to send. So yeah. I'm happy to propose that, time permitting, John, if you confer or invite other councillors to contribute and you collect any responses, if you don't mind.
No, I'll do that. And if people can send ideas or thoughts to me, I'll pull them together.
Okay. Anybody wish to second that? Because we are kind of, Peter, will you second that? Thank you. All those in favour of asking John if he doesn't mind to just collect together a few outline draft responses on that.
Yeah, cool.
That's probably mine. Is there any news about the Larkfleet proposal? Social housing?
I've not heard anything at all. And again, Claire and Mark might know.
No.
I'm afraid not.
I think the actual date is sometime in December that they gave for a decision. I know it was quite a long time away, but I've got December in my mind, but I might be wrong.
Okay.
Can you repeat who I've got down here, because the signal broke up, it keeps coming and going. I've got down to invite other councillors. And then was there a proposer and a seconder?
I think I proposed and Peter seconded, Anita, on that last one.
Peter seconded. It broke up. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The Skeffington Virginal Covering and Environment. The only other one I have, and this again came in not at the last minute, but before we could get this on the agenda. We have, how do I put this? We've been asked to comment on a proposal for double yellow lines on Queen Street and Bridge Street. And they've sent a map as well. So I've asked Anita to circulate that after this meeting. We couldn't, it's not, we could have discussed it, but we couldn't obviously kind of make a decision on it. And I felt this was an important issue. I'm going to ask Anita to circulate it. There was a deadline of the 27th of November, which is extremely unhelpful. And Anita, you've asked for an extension, haven't you? And you've got an equally unhelpful answer back. Is that right?
Yeah, she offered to extend it if I get, I think she said if I get several people asking, she said I could extend it till the 11th. And I mean, that's no good for us because the meeting is on the 14th, the next meeting. So I'm not quite sure whether you want to have another mini meeting to do with that. I don't know what else you can do.
I've got to be honest, I don't understand who else would be consulted with apart from the Geddington Parish Council, double yellow lines in Geddington. I mean, unless it's going over to, I don't know, somewhere else. Peter, then John, please.
Obviously, not having seen because I haven't been circulated yet, but is this the response to the request that Adrian put in for consideration of parking within Geddington and West Street and those sort of things, where it was suggested that there would be a consultation process? So is this actually being triggered by our own actions, or is this something else that we were not aware of?
It says every year the County Council sees a large number of requests to change or introduce. Programme of annual reviews will write to local councils. A review for the Kettering area has commenced, and we gratefully request your input as the parish council into the proposed changes. As with local knowledge, you'll hopefully have a better understanding. Attach the email as a proposal plan for parking restriction changes, which has been drawn up following the assessment, a request submitted to us. Yeah,
because that's what I'm questioning, whether it is the request that Adrian put forward and it was minuted.
Well, sorry to interrupt you, Peter. I think it is because they've called it Queen Street to Bridge Street, Geddington. Proposed introduction of double yellow lines. The problem is they've taken it from the chapel all the way to the cross, and they've neglected the bit outside the post office, which is where the bottleneck is. John?
I'm a bit alarmed about it, really, because I don't think we ever said this is what we want. I think we said, can you have a look and do an assessment of the area? And we're certainly not. I don't want us to be saying to the people of Geddington, well, we've put in a proposal for double yellow lines all up there, because we ain't.
No,
we haven't.
John's absolutely right. The way that Adrian fed it back to us is that it was being raised as what are your suggestions?
Yeah.
Not a question, not a request for, but what are highway suggestions?
Yes.
It could also have been triggered, if you remember, there was the Alison was on very much about people must put response into certain issues when they first brought up the thing about extending the bicycle network and the need for cycle lanes, and it was talking about traffic issues in your area. And when I looked at the submissions that had been made, there were submissions talking about parking within Geddington around the school, around the cross, and in Queen Street. So it could even have been triggered by that.
Well, that would be more legitimate than us, really. So asking for that. Yeah.
The thing is, it says, before we move to the next stage of advertising the proposal in the public domain, we would welcome your feedback and, if possible, confirmation that you support the change being put forward.
Certainly we'd need to see that, and we'd need an opportunity to consider and fully discuss at a meeting.
Yeah.
If the time scales that Anita's trying to negotiate an extension on, if that's the extent of the lengthening of those timescales that we can negotiate, then we would need to have a meeting between now and then to resolve that.
I believe this is I agree, Peter. I think this is a very important issue. This is something that is very emotive to the village, and they've gone and they want to smear yellow paint everywhere in the wrong places. I don't like to propose to convene extraordinary meetings, but if we're not careful, and I'm not speaking ill of residents, but there's a lot of emotion out there about preventing people parking and this and that. And if this goes to public consultation as it is, people might think, "Oh, that's great, we solved the parking problem," and you just create more problems.
Can we not go back to and ask who's raised this in the first place? Whose proposal is it?
Well, it implies a councillor has, but none of us are.
No, I'm not interested. I'm not interested, Chairman, in what it implies. I'm interested in knowing who actually did it. And there's a great danger with these things that we make assumptions which are not necessarily correct. We do need to know as a fact.
I don't know. Perhaps I need to.
If Adrian has put it in, it will be you know, clearly we can go back and say it's a misunderstanding, but
We do need the what we have circulated and questions to be asked to amplify on any areas of uncertainty about it, because it is a very emotive issue. Everybody wants better traffic flow, and everybody wants less parking problems. Nobody wants those double yellow lines outside their house that stops them from parking in front of their house.
Yeah.
So to have a anything almost go through by default would be scandalous.
It would, and likewise, this is an opportunity for some parts of that area to be double yellowed, which
Because
I'm
you're
sure
right.
some councillors will have a strong opinion on, particularly when you get near the ford. At the minute, you can park pretty much where you like, or near the bridge, so people can't get over it. Now, yeah, as we've heard tonight, you can phone 101, you can phone the police, whatever, but double yellow lines will stop it. But having them smeared all the way from the chapel all the way to the cross is not going to do our residents any good at all. So I propose that we look for an extraordinary meeting to try and get this sorted out in 30 to 40 minutes and an alternative view put forward. But in the meantime, Anita, could you please try and find out where this emanated from? And they may have an original correspondence from a councillor.
I mean, it may be very clumsily handled by officers. There's a possibility
probably.
that's happened.
Probably.
But we do need to investigate that. Yeah, I mean,
I'll ask if she can forward any original correspondence.
So
I'll second that. Nick was proposing something. I'll second it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I propose. Yeah, I certainly propose. So I propose we firstly try and source that correspondence. Secondly, that we convene an extraordinary meeting, week commencing Monday the 23rd, to discuss this current plan, any response Anita may have had, and hopefully a clear return from that meeting, an outcome which says, well, no, this is what the parish council would like within that boundary that you've shown.
Yeah.
If somebody wishes to second that.
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favour of that action? Thank you, councillors. Again, I know you're busy and I don't like to keep convening these extraordinary meetings, but I feel this is something that, if we're not careful, we're just close to resolving a lot of parking problems. We could create a bigger one. Sorry, Peter.
Sometimes I was going to say, sometimes the extraordinary meetings, because they're so one issue focused, they can be considerably more efficient than a general meeting, because it has to address so many issues.
Yes. Okay. Right. Thank you. So that was what I had. So if we go on to environment, the first one was the Newton Road, and we've heard from the resident. We have actions. Oh, sorry, Anita. Sorry.
There's the email from Phil that you were going to bring up in correspondence. Yeah.
Yes. We've had an email from former councillor Phil Berry, kindly offering again to do very similar works to the pond as he's led in the last couple of years. Phil is, of course, offering to liaise directly with the respective nature people, the police, in the same way he has done the last couple of years. And he's just seeking our approval for that, which is, I'm not sure if anyone has any views on that other than thank you, Phil, and thank you very much. I don't think
anybody's going to fight him for it. I mean,
I propose we accept it.
I'll second that.
Seconded.
Thank you. Anita, if you're able just to respond with our thanks, I think we're all quite happy with that.
Okay.
Sorry, Anita. Thanks for grabbing my ankles there. Sorry. Anything else on correspondence?
No.
Okay, thank you. Right. Environment, as we said, 9A has been dealt with. 9B, Skeffington Close verges. Now, I think we may have had previous correspondence on this that we didn't get around to. And the issue was pretty much around the mess that Gigaclear raised. And this is, of course, at the top of Is this generic to Skeffington Close? Does anybody know? Or is this the bit at the top where it meets Grange Road? Or is it both?
Yeah, it is totally the top end where it meets Grange Road, both sides of the road. They've always been grassed and getting churned up by cars that park on there. We did 2 years ago have complaints about the safety of that junction because people were parking there, and we also had complaints about how muddy it was. And at that stage, we did look at. We had a proposal from Highways about double yellow lines, but we saw that that would be precluding anybody from parking on the verges anyway, and it just the whole issue went away. Well, it was raised comparatively recently because Gigaclear had a compound on the wider verge, and people were parking still on the narrow verge. When Gigaclear had finished their work, they made good. It was suggested by a resident to me that we should be asking Gigaclear not to just to make good, but make better. I did go back to the resident and clarify that the requirement on Gigaclear is to make good. They actually have no allowable option to improve. But I did undertake that we would put it before the council that we could look at that again. Gigaclear did make good. They raked and levelled everything and reseeded, and within a matter of, well, literally the next day, people were already parking on there, and it has now become very churned up, particularly on the narrower verge. The issue is, if we cars will park there unless we tried to stop cars parking there. If we tried to stop cars parking there, that could create greater problems, because where else do they go other than further down into Skeffington? It probably would be very difficult to enforce the fact that cars don't park there. So it does lend itself to, well, do we wish to look at an enhancement to the surface of those areas such that the inevitable parking doesn't churn up the grass as much? But they are highways verges, they're not parish council verges, so it would need to be channeled through, and it could even be as a funding request to highways that they would carry it out. But we should be conscious of the fact that the parking would, of its very nature, be close to the junction with Grange Road, and it could be argued that it's an unsafe area to park, even though the practice of parking there is well established.
Yes. Thank you,
So
Peter.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I was merely going to say, we have a member of a resident who's suggesting things. The as is that it's muddy and getting muddier, and that will certainly never heal up. It'll always be muddy because it's parking on loose grass.
John.
Yeah, I mean, for years we've looked at that area, and we've had the borough council look at it and ask for funding for it, and they've refused. I think probably on the basis that their view is that it's dangerous to encourage parking there. However, we know that people will park there and will degrade the area. And I don't know where we stand, but I'd be in favour of looking at some way of hardening that area with, I don't know, grasscrete or something like that, which seems to be what the residents suggesting. I don't know if we can. I don't know if we then put ourselves in danger, in jeopardy of encouraging people to park in a dangerous area. I don't know.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I was just, Peter. I was just going to answer John that it's almost what's worse. Now, I had a look at it the other day. Yes, you say we don't want to encourage people to do it, but we have to accept that there is a need. If we wouldn't do it if there wasn't a need. But secondly, if that gets churned up even more, the other alternative is there's a pedestrian walking on the path.
Yes.
And a car slips and plows into them.
Yep. Yep.
If there's some form of harder standing there, and believe me, I think we'd have to get the post box moved and the grip bin moved. The latter would be a lot easier than the former. Unfortunately, Gigaclear have put their box on the road side as opposed to the other side of the path. But the other two things could be moved. We could actually resolve the issue. Peter, sorry, I cut across you. Sorry.
No, that's fine. the only point I was going to say is that, as I say, it is something that we could, if we felt so minded, we could look at progressing it incrementally, because, as I say, it is actually it's Highways' responsibility. Highways would be the ones who would be making the decision on whether it could go through. So if we looked at the costing and said, okay, we could do it by some form of grass reinforcement area with free draining and all those sort of things, so it'd be SUDS compliant.
Mhm.
We would then need to put it to Highways anyway. It may also be that Highways, because all the way down St Mary's Road in Kettering, they closed the road and they changed all of those grass verges to tarmac verges, simply because they were getting churned up by people parking on there. So it's a phenomenon of grass verges they get parked on. Even people with their own grass verge, in other words, a small grass verge in front of the house, it gets parked on. These are wider grass verges. One thing I know that we would find is that some of the areas where the cars do park, the area of grass verge they're parking on is not adequate. If it was converted to tarmac or reinforced area, there's not enough room between the curb and the path to get the vehicle on. Because what's happening is they're rather like we were talking about with Newton Road. They're sometimes a little bit on the road, sometimes a little bit on the path, but it narrows down very much, and it's not wide enough to have cars all the way that the cars do park.
It's not an easy equation. If we were to take it forward, and it's a bit chicken and egg, do we cost it and specify it first, and then deliver it to Highways to say, look, this is what we're talking about, would you say yes? Or do we go to Highways first and just describe what we'd like to do?
I think, as my input on that, I believe that since Highways have been involved in the past, as John was mentioning, as I'd mentioned, we did actually get a scheme from Highways about double yellow lines for that area, which was, we didn't want to go ahead with. It may well be that the quickest thing is it worthwhile us pursuing this any further, Highways, or is it a question of, well, no, because of the requirements, you can't park within 10 meters of a corner or whatever it might be, we couldn't look at it anyway. So it may well be that an approach to Highways, rather than as we have done on the potential closure of the bridge and things like that, to look for guidance.
Okay. Dave Rushton.
Yeah, sure. Is this the bit actually where it's near the actual, shall we say, junction, shall we say? Because I thought the rules were you couldn't park near the junction anyway.
On the road, not necessarily off the road, if there's no double yellow lines.
Right, okay. I was just thinking is I don't know, that stuff that we use for the village, that we could potentially use for the overflow car park on the village hall, is that something that we could not do for Skeffington Close maybe? Because obviously I'm just trying to think that we it'd be nice if we can try and make everybody happy, where the grass verges don't look too messy, and at the same time effectively it's just where they're parking as well, is obviously we're trying to make extra parking spaces. So for me it just makes sense. But
look, does anybody have any objection to us writing to Highways again and just outlining the principle, but very clearly this time? Mark, welcome back.
Should declare an interest on this, being as one of my cars is parked on there at the moment. I was listening to a little bit of that. The Kettering Borough Council refused to do anything with it because they didn't want, it wasn't that it was dangerous, they don't want to set a precedent of building private car parks. The quote that was done last time was by our predecessor borough councillor, and he said it was going to cost 35 grand to tarmac it, but I don't believe that's right, because I know James just had a quote for the YouthWorks car park and it's a hell of a lot less than that. And well, if we, 3 times the size.
Well, if we can build a 44 space car park at the village hall for 37, then I'm sure we could do a 3 space one on Skeffy for less. Yeah,
But
thanks, Mark.
It's
Interesting.
not that it's the parking's necessarily. It's when they're off the road, they're not dangerous. It's when they park on the road that it gets ridiculously dangerous.
Right. Okay. Dave.
I'll just actually add to that, because obviously I'm terrible with road names. You may as well just say whatever road it is. But basically in Kettering, this was a few years back, when you're heading towards Tesco's, the Kettering Council dug up a load of verges and made them into proper parking anyway, because they got rid of that speed camera. So I mean, they have done stuff like that in the past. So I mean, I don't know why I think that's a poor excuse from.
No, it's not Kettering Council. That was highways.
Right, I see.
Kettering Council haven't done anything with roads. It's not our responsibility.
But that's who we're approaching anyway, isn't it?
No, I think we're talking about approaching the Highways Agency for feasibility of that work being done. We're not saying Highways should do it or Kettering should do it, or that we're definitely doing it. We're just, I think we're suggesting, if I've got it right, everybody, we're suggesting that we approach Highways to say, feasibly, could this become some form of hard standing for vehicles to park on? They might come back and say, absolutely not. It's illegal as it is. Can't do it. Or they might come back and say, not telling you none of our business. Or they might come back and say, yes, we don't have a view on it. What we don't want to hear from them is like we did last time. Would you like some double yellow lines? No, we don't want that. That's not what we're asking. Is that what we're saying? Is that what we'd like to do? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Are you proposing that?
I am proposing that.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favour? 5 in favour. Mark, I assume you're abstaining.
Abstain.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, we'll see what we get. 9C, GigaClear updates. More deafening silence from GigaClear then.
To be fair, I have had an email, I think courtesy of Peter, to say they're going to start Newton the end of November and be finished by Christmas. I'm not holding my breath.
It's so reminiscent of Billy Bunter's postal order, isn't it, David? Oh dear. I do hope it happens.
If they delay it longer, Newton just might be in that time zone. So maybe they're just being a bit economical about it. I don't know.
So which bit of the village are they destroying at the minute? Is it Queen Street?
Queen Street.
Yeah.
With the
Just outside my
license
driveway.
number of chaos management. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So is works happening now then, Peter?
I looked outside literally just before the meeting, so I thought, well, okay, it's going to crop up, and I should hate one of you to say, well, they've dug your driveway up, so I thought I'd better just check.
Mm.
They've marked this end of Queen Street with the yellow paint to show where they're going to be putting the pots outside the individual houses. They've got the road closed signs now on Queen Street, as well as the area of that short length of Grange Road and at the end of Queen Street. So they've got it further down Queen Street. And they've got cones out all the way along outside my house, the top, this side of the top end of Queen Street, indicating they're going to be doing something, I assume. But Mark did query before the meeting whether we'd had any householder
But you haven't had any.
information, and we haven't had anything.
I told you from West Street. I told you. There you go. Ah.
I thought they liked me. I thought they'd make a special effort to do something at this end of Queen Street to make sure everybody understood what was happening. But
I don't think they're making any effort, to be honest. Not when they kept that four-way road traffic lights in for 2 weeks.
Well, at least they're treating everybody equally badly. They're not.
Yes,
yes.
I think you've got to mark consistency.
And then
It is meant to be a good.
To sweeten the deal, they offer us half price afterwards.
I mean, I understand it's a good service. Is it not a good product? That's what my understanding is.
It's amazing. It's an amazing product. I don't really want to knock the product, but it's just unfortunate that the engineers are not respecting people. That's all I can say.
No, I mean, on a serious note, is there? I don't want to be defeatist, but is there any point in again asking poor Anita to contact them to try and compel them to communicate, even if it's just going on Facebook, that they promised us when they met us in the coffee shop that time, they would definitely do, that they've learned from their mistakes, they've got a Facebook account, they will go on and just let people know. It takes 15 seconds. Is there any point?
I think there's
Isn't that what
point
Liz
in
Faulkner
trying
was
something.
doing?
Oh, sorry, Peter, then Mark. Sorry, I should.
There is validity in trying something, but what Glyn Richardson stated to me is that they and John Henry and the contractors on site are not allowed to be putting anything on Facebook about works, that all communication has to be done through Liz Faulkner. But there doesn't seem to be the completion of the loop to say, well, somebody needs to notify Liz Faulkner that something needs to go on, that work's going to be carried out, because nothing, the people that are on top of the information are not allowed to do any postings on Facebook.
Okay, I have a view on that. Mark, sorry, you had a view on this. Mark, have you frozen? I think Mark's either frozen or staring somebody out. So we'll
5 hours later.
Okay. Well, if Mark comes back, we'll get his view. Okay. I'm thinking, is it worth then, Anita, a message to Liz, a very brief one?
Yeah, I'll
to
send
say,
one.
Thank you. Please don't spend a long time on a long missive, but just to say very clearly now, residents are quite fed up. We were told that you'd communicate. Your contractors say it has to come from you. You have a Facebook account, but I think the thing to say is, and this isn't being dishonest because people have voiced it, and it is deterring people from taking the GigaClear product because they connect the lack of communication about when work is going to take place outside their house on their street with the overall attitude of GigaClear. And I think that's fair because that's what everybody says on Facebook. That's the conclusions they're coming to. That they don't blame John Henry Group. It's 5% we get the blame, 95% GigaClear. It's not John Henry Group. And I think Liz Faulkner needs to be aware of that.
Okay, yep.
Mark, you wanted to add something and we lost you.
Demonstrating how good GigaClear.
Yeah, it's good old GigaClear. It just went down. I can't remember what I was going to say, but I think Peter said it, to be honest.
Okay. Sorry, are we all happy for Anita to send that brief note, but to the point, for making the point, because we really have to, I believe. That's my proposal anyway. Peter seconding. Thank you. All those in favour of sending that note to Liz Faulkner. Thank you. Against? Abstain? Frozen? Okay, thank you. Sorry, Mark, we're really not getting you very well, I'm afraid.
So no one can vote. Freeze everybody so no one can vote.
It's like Margaret Thatcher in her cabinet. Oh, dear.
The vegetables.
Yeah, Mark's got some issues, some internet issues there. Okay, let's move on. Village Hall car park planning application process. Peter, if you'd be so kind.
Okay. My apologies for if this drags on, but it is quite involved.
Okay.
There are a number of legal consultees, and I did briefly flag it at the last meeting that one of those legal consultees is Sports England, and that Sports England had consulted with ECB, English Cricket Board, and they'd come back with certain comments. And one of those comments was the need for a bull strike risk assessment, and we did agree funding up to £250 because that was the number that I quoted, which was for a desktop survey.
Right.
The bigger picture is that Sports England have actually objected to the planning application. Their policy, and I'm reading now from the email notification that we got from the borough planners, which is that Sports England's policy is to oppose the granting of planning permission for any development which would lead to the loss of or prejudice the use of all or part of a playing field unless one or more of the 5 exceptions stated in its policy apply. They quoted the exception that they viewed this under, which is it's the most valid exception that we would have said was relevant. The proposal has been assessed against Sports England exception E2 in that, and I quote, the proposed development is for ancillary facilities supporting the principal use of the site as a playing field and does not affect the quantity or quality of playing pitches or otherwise adversely affect their use. In other words, we can have legitimately, we can change use of an area of the playing field if it's supporting other aspects of the use of that playing field. The problem is that ECB have stated that in viewing the Google Earth imagery, it would appear that a greater size cricket pitch has been marked out on the playing field. Now, this brings us to the hub of the problem, and I'm going to try sharing some images. And I was trying this in practice this afternoon. I don't know how successful it's going to be, so hopefully they're going to come up.
Yeah.
Right, has anybody got that image come up yet?
Yeah, we can see it.
That's lovely. Okay, that shows the. That went. Oh, it's back again. That shows the Google Earth satellite view of the cricket square. And now to look at the terminology we need to recognise here, there is a pitch, there is a square, and there's a field. The pitch are the pieces that they run. In other words, the pitch has wickets at each end and they run between the wickets. The square is the total number of those pitches. And what you can see in that photograph on there is there's 9 pitches. The one on the extreme right-hand side is an all-weather pitch. So that's an artificial surface. All of the ones to the left of that in various shades of green are the grass pitches. At the time of that photograph, which is the same photographs as we've used within our submission, our planning application, there were 9 pitches that were marked out there. Now, as I say, ECB came up with a different Google Earth image. They came up with, I apologise, it's not the one I wanted to show just at the moment. That one. They came up with this one. Now, if you can visually picture what I was showing you a moment ago, you can see this is
Peter, sorry, you haven't shown us an image.
Still got the old one, Peter. Sorry.
You've got to close this one down and then redo it again.
Okay. So, right. I'm going to
stop sharing at the top.
Right. So stop share the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now share the new page.
Back on the screen. Thank you very much for the.
Why don't you just share your screen? That way, then it's easier. Then.
Okay. Let's just. Right.
Yep, got it.
It's not. I apologise. That's not the one I wanted to show you, but it actually addresses 2 issues. So first of all, let's just concentrate on the cricket square in the middle. We can see now it's got very rectangular.
Yes.
Because what's happened is that there are a number of new pitches laid between the existing pitches and towards the clubhouse. And it's gone from having 9 pitches in that area to having 14 pitches in that area. And what the ECB have said is that the boundary requirement from the pitches, there are minimum requirements for the boundary, and from those new pitches, the boundary requirement is inadequate to the car park. Now, the reality is that the boundary requirement is also inadequate to the clubhouse, because if you can picture the distance, and it's shown there in a red line, that's showing the distance to where the cricket pitch would be, where the car park would be.
Yeah.
But if you swing that through 90 degrees, the veranda, the clubhouse, and the bank in front of the veranda are much closer to the the pitches anyway.
Yes.
But what they've said, ECB have been very selective in their concern about this. They haven't flagged that the boundary on the clubhouse side is a problem. They've simply said that we're asking to put a car park in that bottom area, and in that area the boundary is inadequate.
Have we, Peter, have we spoken to the golf club, to the cricket club?
Yes. So that was the next thing I was going to come to. So when the ECB first made this response, which was on the 30th of September, I got in touch with the cricket club. The Village Hall Management Committee got in touch with the cricket club, and we had because there was a meeting just, I think it was the next day or 2 days later, and we had a site meeting with the cricket club. I challenged them on the fact that they'd created new pitches, and originally they were saying that no, they hadn't, and that was in the Village Hall Management Committee meeting. But when we had a site meeting with the chairman, he conceded that they had created some new pitches there. And I said, well, that unfortunately is what's caused a problem with the planning application, because there's now a conflict between these new unauthorised pitches that you've created and the boundary that is necessary from those overlapping the car park. So they said, well, okay, as far as they're concerned, that the boundary is more than adequate just there. They came up with some numbers. I said, we know nothing about the requirements for a boundary distancing for cricket. You're the guys that are playing cricket. You must give us some response on this. They did a response where they clearly stated, as far as they were concerned, there was no issue on short boundaries from the new pitches that they had created. ECB have responded back and said, no, that they need bigger boundaries than our cricket club was saying. Our cricket club was saying they needed 35 yards. The ECB are saying they need a minimum of 40 metres, and because there would be a change of surface in that area, they would need an extra 3 metres run out after that. And what they've put on this illustration that I'm showing on the screen there is 2 circles. The inner circle is at 45 plus 3 metres. And that is, therefore, it's larger than the 40 metres, but it gives some indication of roughly where the full boundary would be from that end. What they've also put on there is, and this is the thing that is of most concern, as far as I'm concerned, needs to be of most concern to the parish council. That outer ring that they put on there is what ECB strike as the, and I'll quote their terminology, the larger circle explains the concern regarding ball strike at 80 metres radius. So the ECB are saying that where these new cricket pitches are, there is a problem, an associated ball risk. And if you look at the areas that are covered by that outer ring, it includes people playing tennis, people parking in the existing car park, people on the veranda of the clubhouse, and all the way around to children playing in the playground area. So I maintain that we as a parish council have a duty of care to our residents, and that in itself is causing a problem. And just to demonstrate the reality of that, hopefully you're seeing now that one. That's the front of the clubhouse. Those doors that you see at the bottom there. Have you got that picture, by the way?
Yes.
Right. Those doors are the ones to our normal parish council committee rooms. So that's a hole in the fascia above that, which obviously is well stepped back from the front edge of the clubhouse and the seating area on the veranda. So what I've done, I've spoken to the planning officer, and I've said, well, you know, we're now in possession of new information. The new information is that there are additional cricket pitches that have been created that weren't authorised. They did not put it before the Village Hall Committee, who give them the licence to use the cricket facilities within the clubhouse. They didn't put it before the parish council. But ECB are flagging that actually it's quite dangerous. They're saying that we would need the Labo Sport survey that we were talking about at the last meeting. It would need to cover a much larger area than we were anticipating. We were thinking it was essentially something just for the car park end, but it would need to be the whole of that side of the cricket pitch. There is the issue, you know, it's not up to us to rule on whether the boundary is itself wide enough, but it doesn't meet the ECB requirements for a boundary. It's only about 30 metres on that side from those nearest pitches. But it is a dangerous area. So I negotiated with the planning officer that our case could be put on hold, our planning application could be put on hold until the 15th of January, because he was talking about in December. And I said, well, it doesn't necessarily give us time to get the survey done, because we would need to see as a parish council the results of this risk analysis before we could take a view. My view is that and I'm not necessarily saying that we should be confronting the cricket club with this, but it is an issue that the cricket club have done something. They've extended their area of the cricket square, and a result of that is that just for now, let's park, using a cliche, but let's put to one side the car park issue. Their action in creating new cricket pitches has now brought a whole new area into the risk area that will be identified under the risk management, the ball risk management survey that we need to get from Labo Sport. And Labo Sport will, as part of that, would identify mitigation measures. And we need to see what they are, because my view, candidly, is that the cricket club cannot indefinitely keep expanding their area, requiring more and more area of the recreation ground to extend even further to get new boundaries, simply because they want extra pitches there.
Yes.
I think these extra 5 pitches that they seem to have put in there, I think would, and I'm speculating here, but it's probably something to do with the issues that we did hear in the past about the need for a second pitch and reducing the amount of wear on the existing pitches. What they've said to me is that these are for juniors. These are they're not the first grade pitches. These are going to be for juniors. However, they still exist and they still have the same requirement according to ECB. And ECB state in adult cricket and for many junior games, we now expect a boundary in excess of 40 metres. So I apologise before I went into that long explanation. I apologise again for how long it's taken, but the summary of it is that we have a situation where action by the cricket club, and I'll say just for now, it's going to have an impact on the car park, because at the moment, if we do nothing else, we cannot do the car park anyway, because Sports England have stated that should the local planning authority be minded to grant planning permission for the proposal, contrary to Sports England's objection, then in accordance with the Town and Country Planning Consultation England Direction 2009, the application should be referred to the Secretary of State via the National Planning Casework Unit. In other words, Sport England have said, we're telling you can't do it, and if you insist on going ahead with it, we want it going before the Secretary of State. Kettering Borough Council have, and we know what, and I'm not, but we do know Kettering Borough Council are risk averse when it comes to taking cases before the Secretary of State. The planner has said to me that based upon the objection from Sports England, he is minded that they will refuse our application. And in fact, he was very, I appreciated that, because there were other outstanding issues. And he said, rather than incur the cost of surveys and architects and archaeologists to address some of these other issues, just recognise the fact that Sports England, their objection is a primary objection, and we would not be it would be unlikely that we would be going against that. So as I say, put to one aside for now any relevance it has to the planning application, let's look at it as a risk issue. And we have here identified by ECB that a whole area of activity for dog walkers, children using the playground, people using the current car park, people using the area for walking, dog walking and sitting, people using the tennis courts. They're all in the area that is affected by the potential ball strike from the new pitches. And my suggestion on a way forward is that we'd originally agreed the funding for the 250 for a Labosport survey. That is a survey where we would do the measurements and they would do a desktop survey. The next level up is £400, so it's an extra £150, but they do everything. They come and take the measurements and then they do the report and they identify risks and they identify mitigation measures. And I'm stating that with, we were talking earlier about insurance, irrespective of our duty of care, we would be liable to claims under our insurance if we are aware of a risk and have not taken suitable measures to minimise that risk. So I believe that we should be authorising the larger funding for £400 full survey, and then when we have that result, then we'll have, it opens up whatever course of action we have to take then, which may be right. Cricket club, you can't play on those because you damage, there's too much risk. Or cricket club, if you play on those, the mitigation measure being identified is netting around the whole of that side of the boundary. I've no idea what the report will say until the report is commissioned.
Well, Peter, I'm going to interrupt because look, it sounds important and we want to resolve tonight. We've got 10 minutes left, and people are dying to ask you questions, I think. So David Watson, then Dave Rushton, please.
Yeah, Chairman, my concern is, yes, all the points that Peter's made, but there must be a risk that the club will lose its place in the league if it doesn't provide, if by doing what they've done, they've breached the guidance from the ECB. And that would, I mean, it would save us some money because then we wouldn't need to extend the car park. But do they not appreciate that what they've done puts them at grave risk, regardless of the car park? And there's also their insurers.
Well, so yes, very quickly. Sorry, Peter. So yeah, what is our cricket club's view on this?
The cricket club, just looking at the insurance, David mentioned insurance. If you remember, the cricket club did respond when we first made them aware of when we talked about the temporary car park at that bottom end. And they said that their insurance doesn't cover them for damage to vehicles. No cricket club has the level of insurance that covers people for damage to vehicles. They attend at their own risk. And that was why we said, well, we can't allow people to park there without some form of ball risk mitigation. The cricket club, I haven't been back to them because literally this is just, I mean, it's all bubbling as we're speaking. They did state that, well, if it's a problem, we'll scrap those pitches. Unfortunately, they exist, and we cannot bring force, and the cricket club cannot voluntarily scrap pitches. Otherwise, it goes against Sports England's directive that you shall not reduce the quality or quantity of playing pitches. So, because they've created them, they exist. The as is they exist. What we have to do is find. I've taken this logic 3 or 4 stages ahead, and I believe that we'll get the Labosport survey that will identify, yes, there is a level of risk that is unacceptable along the whole of this area, and the mitigation measures would be that you don't play on these top 4 pitches, you only play on pitches from that going down, and therefore the balls will be landing on the recreation ground outfield rather than the playing areas, the playground and the tennis club and things like that. If the risk assessment that ECB have stated we must do or should do, if that itself says the cricket pitches that have been recently introduced are troublesome, if the cricket club continue their logic, which they've said they would support, of saying, well, we'll scrub them, we won't use them, then I can't see why ECB would be insistent upon, well, they exist, you've got to use them. even though it's going to put members of the public at risk.
Okay. We need to really get to where we need to get to. Dave Rushton, you had a comment.
Yeah, sure. Well, my thing is I'm pretty sure we had this discussion about putting nets up, but I can't remember what the outcome of that was.
It was controversial. It passed through, but this supersedes that, Dave. I think what they're saying is that with or without nets, this ball can crash anywhere where it shouldn't be. We'd need miles of netting.
Well, according to physics, I don't think objects can pass through other objects without it colliding.
Yes.
Very briefly, the nets were relevant to the bottom end, and if we were to be allowed to have the extension car park, it would still need netting there if they use these top pitches, irrespective of whatever view we might take on all the other areas where there's danger. But yeah, we did have the discussion. It was contentious, but we did see that we could not instruct members of the public to put their car in an area and then that area to be bombarded with cricket balls. But as I say, it's now become a much wider issue.
Not long left, folks. We need to get this resolved. Does John or Mark have a view on what Peter's proposed? I think Peter, without putting words in your mouth, you're proposing we go for the £400 survey, which is a practical risk assessment on the ground, and could probably get this through, but also correct the cricket club's contention and tell them where they should be playing.
It's a can of worms, isn't it? We've opened up here. I don't think we've got any other. I don't think there's any other alternative. I think we have to do that. If indeed, if the cricket club's almost going to be allowed to play by the ECB.
I agree. But a couple of points. A, the Borough Council Planning Committee is not averse to stuff going to appeal as per the 5 rejections we've had in the last 4 weeks. If the cricket club haven't got public liability insurance for anyone who's hit by a cricket ball, they're in serious trouble, because that's, I think, illegal. But we need to sort it out. They've been allowed to do what they want for way too long, and this has just shown that they haven't even got the regard for the right rules of their own game.
I think this may kill a few birds, Peter, is my view on this. It might. We're not even talking about a second cricket pitch now, but that will come back around again. And I think if the actual experts in cricket, and not just our local people, say this is how a cricket square pitch, whatever needs to be, this is how far, and all the rest of it, that's indisputable, because we can sit and argue for many meetings over it. This will tell us, and this is about risk to people. So, and we need to expedite our car park, not for the cricket club, but for all the residents. So for me, Peter, I'm minded to say, and happy to vote very quickly on this, that we should go with that more enhanced survey.
I'll second.
So I'm proposing that. John is seconding that. All those in favour of the enhanced survey, £400, which is 150 on top of the 250. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you, folks. We have about 3 or 4 minutes left, and we are going to have to move some of these environmental items to the extraordinary meeting we're going to have to convene over the double yellow lines. Is there anything, Peter, as the environment rep, that you want to bring out in our last literally 2 or 3 minutes? That could take the 2 or 3 minutes.
There's nothing that I'm aware of that's urgent, that's spoiling.
Okay. So for I'm not sure if Dave and or Mark were there, but basically we've had a very, very short notice request to consider a proposal for double yellow lines on Queen Street and Bridge Street, which is not really what we want, and a very short deadline.
Yeah,
so
I've already given as borough councillor, I've already made my comments.
Yeah,
fully opposed to it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we needed this on the agenda, etc. We didn't have a chance to do that. It's important. So we're looking at convening a meeting, folks. Did we say week? I've suggested week commencing Monday, the 23rd of November, but the answers have to be in on Friday. So I'm thinking if we could go for one evening, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday that week, would be useful. Okay. Anita, could I ask you to convene that, please, and send it out? So that'll be an extraordinary meeting, and it will be, and the items will be, of course, to consider the proposal for double yellow lines, but then we also have the agenda points that we've not been able to get to this evening because of time constraints. Okay, and that will have to include Newton and Little Oakley as well, not just the environment.
I can't do Tuesday or Wednesday that week.
Mondays are traditional for us.
I can't do Tuesday.
Can I suggest Monday the 23rd?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you
Yeah.
very
What
much.
time? What time?
7:30, Anita, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
And just say thanks to Peter for working his way through all that stuff. Good Lord.
Yeah, Peter. Yeah.
And there's so much more.
Oh, thanks.
And again, I repeat my apologies for having. There was so much to get out, but it was important.
It was important that you did it, Peter. Thank you. So look, if we can cover then items D, well, obviously the yellow lines, D2 onwards, Newton and Little Oakley, please, Anita, at that meeting.
Okay.
And
Is there anything for Newton other than the obviously the caravan park and Gigaclear, both of which we've
Okay.
no idea.
all right. Well, please put Little Oakley on it, Anita, because Terry might be able to join us on that one, and there might be
Okay.
something. You should give him the opportunity. Folks, I'm sorry for what could have been a shorter meeting. It's finished a little bit later, but again, I think this has been very constructive. And again, Peter, my thanks as well for that. So thank you very much, everybody, and hopefully see you all on the 23rd. Thank you very much for being so patient.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
Stay
everybody.
safe, everyone.
Yes.
Thanks, Nick.
Good-
Yes, stay
good
safe.
evening.
Cheers then. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. No worries. See you later. Take care.
Okay.